All right. So first off, I want to ask you, is there a context for this paper? Like, is this coming out of anything that's not just the research at the Ethereum Foundation? Because like Joseph Poon doesn't work at the Ethereum Foundation, right?
No, Joseph Poon used to work on Lightning, but he wrote this paper because he thinks this is a good way for blockchains to scale.
So it's like
and Vitalik helped.
Dude, it's like modern day rap music. It's like you get the collab of people that are doing it from different worlds.
Yeah, exactly. Vitalik is like Dr. Dre.
Yeah, got it. All right, cool. So this is just this is something that's unimplemented, or it's basically abstracted from Joseph Poon's project.
So Joseph Poon wrote like the seminal Lightning paper like 3 years ago, right? And that sort of spurred a whole world of state channel research and implementation. As far as I can tell, this is going to do the same thing. And as of yet, it's totally unimplemented.
Okay, cool. All right, let's do it. Scalable multi-party computation.
Did you hit the record button?
I did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We're good on that. Yeah, I figure I can also edit this because this isn't being live streamed. But the thing, like, I think it's better to do these kind of things as live streams because you have people commenting on it, which is kind of cool. You just like the comments in the corner, but this is all learning process.
Yeah, no worries. Go for it.
Cool. All right. With blockchains, the solution for enforcing correctness has generally been having every participant validate the chain themselves, right? To accept a new block requires one to fully validate the block to ensure correctness. Many efforts to scale blockchain transactional capacity, for example, the Lightning Network, requires using time commitments to build a fidelity bond, an assert challenge agreement. Right, okay. So that the asserted data must be subject to a dispute period for participants in the blockchain to enforce the state. This assert challenge construction allows one to assert a particular state is correct, and if the value is incorrect, then a dispute period exists where the other observer can provide a proof challenging that assertion before a certain agreed time. In the event of fraudulent or faulty behavior, the blockchain can then penalize the faulty actor. This creates a mechanism for participants to be encouraged to enforce if and only if the incorrect state is asserted. By having this assert challenge proof construction, interested participants can be able to assert ground truths to non-interested participants on the root blockchain. Okay, so that makes sense to me. It's basically saying that people have conceived ways to scale blockchains by doing off-chain transactions where you sign state agreements not posted to the blockchain, but if somebody tries to, do something that is not what you agreed to, you can challenge that with the signed signature and it can override it, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's a construction for like fidelity bonded centralized servers with private blockchains. And basically you run a private blockchain with a single node, but if anybody can prove that you made a faulty transaction, then they get to burn or seize some amount of bond or stake that you have on the chain.
So is this construction actually implemented anywhere, or this is all just theoretical right now?
Not that I know of, but Omise Go is the closest to having it. I think they said they're the first ones that will implement this. So. Because Omise Go is like sort of like a sidechain rooted on Ethereum. So this is sort of the abstract form of that.
Gotcha. All right. So, yeah, I'm just like, because I read a lot about like this like challenge mechanism where like you can punish faulty actors by challenging within a time period, but I just don't know like if there's a production implementation of that. But anyway, okay, I'll keep going like next. So This structure can be used not only for payments, but extended to computation itself. So the blockchain is the adjudication layer for contracts. However, the presumption would be that all parties are participants in validating the computation. In Lightning Network, for example, the construction makes it so that one can establish commitments to computing contract state with pre-signed tree of multi-signature transactions of conditional state. Okay, cool. All right, I'll just finish this section and then we'll go.
Okay.
So these constructions allow for highly powerful computation at scale. However, there are some issues which require the summation of a lot of external state. For example, summation of entire systems / markets, computation of a large amount of shared / incomplete data, large number of contributors. This form of commitment to multi-party off-chain state channels requires participants to fully validate the computation. or else there's significant amount of trust established in the computation itself, even in single round games. Single round, I don't know what they mean by single round games, but whatever.
So single round games is like when after the game, your adversary has no recourse. It's as opposed to iterated games where you have multiple rounds.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's like if you can screw someone over, and if you win and you're done. But if like there's like multiple rounds, if you screw someone over, they know you screwed them over going into the next round. So
exactly.
Exactly. Okay. Additionally, there is a presumption of rounds whereby the execution path must be completely unrolled before contract initiation, which gives participants the opportunity to exit and force expensive computation on-chain, as it is not possible to prove which party is halting. So instead, we seek to design a system whereby computation can occur off blockchain, but ultimately enforceable on-chain, which is scalable to billions of computations per second with minimal on-chain updates. These state updates occur across an autonomous set of proof-of-stake validators who are incentivized towards correct behavior enforced by fraud proofs, which allow for computation to occur without a single actor being able to easily halt the computation service. This needs to be able to minimize issues around the data availability problem, for example, block withholding, minimizing the state updates in the root blockchain necessary in the event of Byzantine actors to prevent risk discounted transaction fees on the root chain, and mechanism to enforce state changes. Similar to Lightning Network, Plasma is a series of contracts which runs on top of existing blockchain and ensure enforcement while ensuring that one is able to hold funds in contract state with net settlement. Okay, so that's just introduction, blah, blah, blah. We need to scale to 1 billion computations per second with off-chain something.
Yeah, the interesting part of that was that it was essentially proof-of-stake validators that govern this Plasma blockchain. Or that's at least the configuration. I'll read the next section.
Cool. All right. Cool.
Plasma is a way to do scalable computation on the blockchain with the structure of creating economic incentives to autonomously and persistently operate the chain without active state transition management by the contract creator. The nodes themselves are incentivized to operate the chain. Additionally, significant scalability is achieved by minimizing the funds represented in a spend from a contract to a single bit in a bitmap, so that one transaction and signature represents a payment coalesced with many participants. We combine this with a MapReduce framework to construct scalable computation enforced by bonded smart contracts. This construction allows one to be able to have externalized parties hold funds and compute contracts on one's behalf, similar to a miner, but Plasma instead runs on top of an existing blockchain, so one does not need to create transactions on the underlying chain for every state update, including new users' ledger entries, with minimal data on-chain for coalesced state updates. And then we have our diagram. So figure 1, we can see that there's a root chain, Ethereum, and then Plasma contracts around it, which has private blockchain, decentralized exchange, social network, and micropayments, all forms of off-chain state.
Right. So, but when it's saying like micropayment, social network, those aren't Plasma constructs. That's just somebody saying that like any user can use a Plasma contract for that purpose.
That would be user space.
The Plasma is just like an abstract thing.
Yeah, exactly.
There are many different cases.
So that brings us to figure 1, which says that anyone can create a custom Plasma chain for smart contract scalability for many different use cases. Plasma is a series of smart contracts which allows for many blockchains within a root blockchain. The root blockchain enforces the state in the Plasma chain. The root chain is the enforcer of all computation globally, but it is only computed and penalized if there is a proof of fraud. Many Plasma blockchains can coexist with their own business logic and smart contract terms. In Ethereum, Plasma would be composed of EVM smart contracts running directly on Ethereum, but only processing tiny commitments, which represent an incredibly large amount of computation and financial ledger entries in non-Byzantine cases.
Right. So it's saying Ethereum is the Supreme Court.
Yeah, basically. And another way of having this is like state channels are dead. There are only private blockchains, and those private blockchains are called Plasma chains. And if you take a state channel and you add in, you change the sequence number to a block number, and you add in a historical record of all the transactions and put it in a Merkle tree. That's your transactions root. And then if you have a state tree that is also a Merkle tree of the current state, that is the state root. And then you have a blockchain. Right? So I think that's what he's getting at.
So you're basically forking off the Ethereum chain with specific Merkle roots of the state tree and block number, and then you just go from there to your own stuff.
You can almost think of it like a Git branch, but it's not quite. Yeah. So I'll keep going. Plasma is composed of 5 key components: an incentive layer for persistently computing contracts in an economically efficient manner, structure for arranging child chains in a tree format to maximize low-cost efficiency and net settlement of transactions, a MapReduce computing framework for constructing fraud proofs of state transitions within these nested chains to be compatible with the tree structure while reframing the state transitions to be highly scalable, a consensus mechanism which is dependent upon the root blockchain which attempts to replicate the results of Nakamoto consensus incentives, and a bitmap UTXO commitment structure for ensuring accurate state transitions off the root blockchain while minimizing mass exit costs, allowing for exits in data unavailability or other Byzantine behaviors when design points of Plasma operation. Interesting.
A lot of words there.
Yeah, there's a lot of words. We'll have to unpack that in these sections.
So you think that it'll just be unpacked? We can just keep going.
Yeah. So I mean, the state structure that he describes, this tree structure for reframing them. That's like being able to participate in what we used to think of as like multiple state channels from the same like master state channel. But now each of those things are just called plasma chains. And so the idea where you have your state in a branch is so that like any sequence of events leading to any of the state in any of those branches can be computed on chain and verified or detected to be fraudulent if somebody makes a invalid move.
Right. So yeah, it's in the analogy that I said earlier. If the Ethereum chain is the Supreme Court, you can also have lower district courts.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, yeah, your local tribal justice systems, and then just go all the way up the system, all the way back to the Ethereum main chain if needed to.
Totally.
It's like, yeah, it's like adding recursion to blockchains. That should be fun.
Should be fun.
Yeah. All right. Plasma blockchain, or externalized multi-party channels. We propose a method whereby multi-party off-chain channels can hold state on behalf of others. We call this framework a plasma blockchain. For funds held in the plasma chain, this allows for deposits and withdrawal of funds into the plasma chain, with state transitions enforced by fraud proofs. This allows for enforceable state and fungibility since one is able to deposit and withdraw with the counting of the plasma block matching the funds held in the root chain. So plasma is not designed to be compatible with fractional reserve designs. That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
So they are saying, so this is talking about how you get ether into a plasma chain?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
It's showing that so like Alice has 1 ether on plasma block 3, but it's really that Alice has 1 ether on a smart contract on the root chain, and that is just represented. It's like locked up by the plasma chain, and it's in block 3.
Right. So your ether goes into a smart contract, then that can bring it into like one level deep in the inception thing into the plasma world. And then in the plasma world, that ether being in the smart contract could represent whatever you code into the chain. So it's
right. Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense.
So like what?
Oh yeah, look, literally as I said, inception. Plasma blockchains are a chain within a blockchain.
Yeah. So like a real world example of this is like you open up a plasma. I don't even know what to call this, like a plasma channel or something. So the way we used to think about this is like you open a state channel with one person, but then like within that state channel, you want to do 3 things. I want to like also bet on prediction markets and play chess and like send you micropayments. And so this would allow you to do each of those.
Gotcha. Okay, chain within a blockchain. The system is enforced by bonded fraud proofs, right? Which is that the plasma blockchain does not disclose the contents of the blockchain on the root chain. Right, okay, so
they just expose the hash of the...
Right, so you could make a plasma chain. So the smart contract itself is obviously viewable, but it's saying the contents of the plasma chain don't necessarily have to be.
Yeah, it could be just between 2 people and then you commit the hash.
Right, okay. So instead, the block header hashes are submitted on the root chain, and if there's proof of fraud submitted on the root chain, then the block is rolled back and the block creator is penalized. This is very efficient. Wait, okay. Hold on. So the Plasma blockchain, is there like they're going to define, I guess, a standard way to create one of these? It's not just the contract on Ethereum that they're calling Plasma. It's like there's an actual like API for making a Plasma blockchain, I'm assuming.
Right. They're going to be very, very related and intertwined. So you'd need to generate state in a very specific way off chain to represent some off chain data, but like you can never lose the ability for the smart contract that is on chain to be able to verify that data and the state transitions that data is involved in.
Right. So most likely this will be a library called Plasma, and you'll like run it, and then that will make your Plasma blockchain.
Yeah, and it'll talk to the Plasma contract, and it'll like ask. So you'll either need to write your state transitions in Solidity, and then run the Ethereum JS virtual machine when it comes time to validate your state transitions, or you'll need to, I guess, using their MapReduce framework. If you write your code in a language interpretable by like using MapReduce, then also have that on chain. Then you can interpret like the MapReduce functions on chain, and then you can verify your transactions.
Huh.
So there's an on chain and off chain component to Plasma. That's what I meant.
Yeah. This will be okay. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what they say about it. This is very efficient. As many state updates can be represented. Oh, yeah. So there's this thing about block is rolled back. That's all the off chain stuff. So this is very efficient. As many state updates.
Yeah. The block being rolled back is actually, it's an off chain generated block that you're publishing to the main chain.
Right. You're publishing the block hash, or like actual more than that.
So it's sort of like if you need to verify it. So if there's a dispute, then you have to submit the fraud proof, which is the proof that determines that the block that somebody submitted is not valid. And then the chain would have to be able to verify that. So you need the minimum amount of data to prove that the block submitted is valid.
Got it. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I wonder how in depth they're going to get. I mean, I'm assuming if there's 47 pages here, like they probably will. So, I mean, I'm just like 10 of them are probably citations, but
yeah.
Are you cited in here?
I don't know. We'll find out.
All right. So this update can represent balances which are not represented on the root blockchain, right? Alice does not have her ledger balance on the root chain. Her ledger is on the Plasma chain, and the balance, right, is smart contract enforced on the Plasma chain. Gray items are old blocks. Black is the most recent block, which has been propagated and committed on the root chain. So, right. Okay. Incredibly high amount of transactions can be committed on this Plasma chain with minimal data hitting the root blockchain. Any participant can transfer funds to anyone, including transfers to participants not in the existing set of participants. These transfers can pay into and withdraw funds in the root blockchain's native coins / tokens. Okay, so what this is saying is like is this saying that you can use Ethereum addresses in this thing?
I think so, because if you're doing the same signature validation or verification on the blockchain, then you get the same Ethereum namespace for free.
So it would be like if you had your own Plasma chain and you sent Ether to one of my address or whatever, something into my address, like I have an entry point, even though I was never like in your configuration, just because you're using the accounts essentially.
Yeah. What it means to me is that Plasma needs to allow people to join and leave, which is a harder problem that I don't think anybody solved well.
Right. So they allow one or a network of participants in a proof of stake network to be able to manage a blockchain without a full persistent record of the ledger on the root blockchain. Yeah. And without giving custodial trust to third party or parties. In the worst case, funds are locked up and time value is lost with mass exits on the blockchain.
Right. So this is when they say Plasma allows one or a network, they're saying, so the one is like a centralized server running a private blockchain, managing all the state transitions itself, and then just telling everybody else in the network the results. Whereas the network of participants in this proof of stake network is the Omise Go system, where you have all the Omise Go makers are generating new blocks and seeing all the transactions.
Okay, that makes sense. We construct a series of fraud proofs as smart contracts on the root blockchain, which enforce state in this channel so that attempts at fraud or non-Byzantine behavior can be slashed. So they're saying each plasma chain is governed by a proof of stake model. They're not even talking about Ethereum here.
Right. Yeah, so you're going to have a smart contract with addresses and tokens on Ethereum, and like a valid block is valid if enough people with enough tokens sign that block.
So the plasma blockchains are just like they're their own governance. It's like configurable governance. So this is saying like everyone that wants to do all this crazy DAO stuff, like you would do it in a plasma chain. That's like the framework for doing it.
Potentially, yeah.
All right. So how much more is in this section? All right, I'll finish the section. So these fraud proofs enforce an interactive protocol of fund withdrawals. Similar to the Lightning Network, when withdrawing funds, the withdrawal requires time to exit. We construct an interactive game whereby the exiting party attests to a bitmap of participants' ledger outputs arranged in a UTXO model. I don't get what that's supposed to mean. Bitmap of UTXO or whatever. But anyone on the network can submit it. What's up?
I don't either.
Yeah. Bitmap. I haven't heard that word in a really long time either. But anyone on the network can submit an alternate bonded proof which attests to whether any of the funds have already been spent. In the event this is incorrect, anyone on the network can attest to fraudulent behavior and slash the bonds to roll back the attestation. After sufficient times, the second bonded round allows for the withdrawal to occur, which is a bond on state before a committed timestamp. This allows for withdrawal in mass so that a faulty plasma chain can be rapidly exited. In coordinated mass withdrawal events, our participant may be able to exit with less than 2 bits of block space consumed on the parent blockchain. Oh, so is this saying every block? Okay, so every block gets committed to the smart contract. That's on this virtual chain. Every block is getting committed.
Yeah, it looks like it. So you don't need to do it like that. You can do it like that. So the reason that you need to commit blocks is so that people can withdraw their funds, because the blocks have the information about what your new balance is.
Right.
So if nobody needs to withdraw their funds like at that specific block, you don't really need to publish it. But I don't know. I guess we'll see. I'm not sure. I still want to know what they mean by like having the multiple rounds of bonding and then the bit mapping space and stuff. So
in the event of a block withholding attack, participants can rapidly and cheaply do a mass exit with substantial cost savings versus previous off-chain proposals. Additionally, this does not place any trust in a coalition of validator nodes. So I guess, so they're solving some problem that I didn't even know existed, which is that it's hard to mass exit a state channel, apparently. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Figure 3, exit of funds in the event of block withholding. The red block is withheld and committed on the root chain, but Alice is not able to achieve plasma block 4. She exits by broadcasting a proof of funds. On the root blockchain, her withdrawal is processed after a delay, similar to how closing out Lightning is an interactive mechanism between 2 participants. The primary difference is that not all participants need to be online to update state, and the participants do not need a record of entry on the root blockchain to enable their participation. One can place funds on Plasma without direct interaction on chain with minimal data to confirm transactions when constructing Plasma chains in tree format. So is this saying because of that proof of stake thing, you don't is that what you don't need to actually enter on chain because you could have the proof of stake people validating your transactions regardless?
Scroll down just a little bit. Oh no, I guess this is different. So it seems like what it's saying is that I can take an ether and send it to like the 3rd tree depth of a Plasma blockchain without having to go through the root node, like without having to actually do a transfer on Ethereum. I don't know that that's true, or like based on what I know, I don't know that that's true unless you're like already in that chain to begin with, or like you're in, you have some like common root node that you have money on. But so like you might not need to be in the 3rd tree depth, but as long as you're in the 1st tree depth, you can get there, type of thing. But I guess we'll see.
Gotcha. Yeah, I hope they bring this down to earth a little bit. It's getting a little abstract, but
yeah, that's how they like to put it, though.
All right, go ahead.
I'll start. Yeah, Plasma composes blockchains in a tree. Block commitments flow down, and exits can be submitted to any parent chain, ultimately being committed to the root blockchain. We construct a mechanism similar to the court system. There you go. If Lightning Network uses an adjudication layer for payments, which is ultimately enforceable on the root blockchain, we create a system of higher and lower courts to maximize availability and minimize costs in non-Byzantine states. If a chain is Byzantine, it has the option of going to any of its parents, including the root blockchain, to continue operation or exit with the current committed state. Instead of enforcement of an incrementing non-state via revocations, we construct a system of fraud proofs to enforce balances and state transitions of these chain hierarchies. In effect, we are able to create state transitions which are only periodically committed to parent chains, which then flows to the root blockchain. This allows for incredible scale of computation and account state, as we are able to only submit raw data to parent or root chain in Byzantine conditions. Recovery from partially Byzantine conditions are cost minimized, since one can go to a parent plasma chain to enforce state.
Okay. First question.
Yeah, go for it.
What do they mean by Byzantine? Like when it says like if a chain is Byzantine.
Yeah, so if you scroll back up like two pages to where the red boxes were, like one way a chain can be Byzantine is by doing block withholding, which means you've like committed the block headers of the block to the root chain, as in this diagram, but you don't release the block after you've created it to anybody else. Another way you can be Byzantine is just like generating transactions that say that other people's balances have been reduced and yours has been increased, and then trying to commit those to the root blockchain.
So when they say is Byzantine, they're saying like it's malicious.
Yeah.
So
and the Byzantine generals problem is like all the generals, it's like there's the economically rational actor who will like maximize their outcome, and then there's Byzantine who, like randomly fuck with people even though it might not benefit them.
Gotcha. So when they're just saying, when they say Byzantine, they just mean like is randomly fucking with people.
Yeah, just imagine the Joker like burning a pile of money every time somebody says Byzantine.
Oh, okay, perfect. That's a great analogy. If the chain is the Joker.
Yeah, exactly.
So basically they're trying to think about how you can make this whole system work even if there's Jokers throughout here.
Exactly. All right, where were we? Okay. So this child blockchain runs on top of a root blockchain, for example, Ethereum, and from the root blockchain's perspective, is only seeing periodic commitments with the tokens bonded in the contract for enforcement, proof of stake consensus rules, and business logic of the blockchain, right? And so proof of stake, it's like, still 1 to n. It's like it could be a single person proof of stake or something, right? This has significant advantages in maximizing block availability and minimizing stake for the validation of one's coins. However, since not all data is being propagated to all parties, only those who wish to validate a particular state, parties are responsible for monitoring the particular chain they are interested in and periodically to penalize fraud, as well as personally exiting the chain rapidly in the event of block withholding attacks. So we've got this diagram. Alice has an ether on the 3rd tree depth of Plasma, and then they can move to another chain by transferring their funds to avoid being a descendant of the faulty parent. So the faulty parent, so skipping down to figure 5, the faulty blockchain shaded in red is routed around by broadcasting a commitment to its parent Plasma root chain, the right dotted blue line. So what that reads is, in the event of Byzantine failure, block commitments broadcast to the parent root chains. If a commitment occurs on a parent chain and is orphaned, an update retracting the orphan must be submitted to that parent chain. So Alice, who has money in this 3rd tree depth, says to the 1st tree depth, hey, please move my money to this other branch at the 2nd tree depth layer from the red 2nd tree depth layer. Right?
Gotcha. Yeah. So, again, it's so... Yeah, it's still like just abstract. It's like, I understand what it's saying, but it'd be super helpful to like have this grounded a little bit. But okay, so
right, okay. So
I'm actually curious. Do they have code for this? I mean, I'm assuming they do, right? If it's in the Yomize Go thing, but like,
I would hope so.
Yeah, so this construction you could finish it, but
Right. This construction in non-Byzantine environments coalesces the tree of blockchain states and updates all plasma chains. An entire set of updates across all chains can be attested to in a 32-byte hash with a signature.
So this construction
it's a Merkle tree of Merkle trees, so you only need the one hash.
Right, the Merkle root of all of it. So no matter how inception-y you get, you always have the one Merkle hash that represents your entire plasma chain. And then you could validate any state. Okay, all right, here comes the good part, I think. Plasma proof of stake. Well, it's fairly interesting to be able to hold fund on behalf of others with a single validator. We propose a method whereby a single party can enforce state with a set of validators, often in a proof of stake framework requiring either ETH bonding or bonding in a token, ERC20, whatever. So the consensus mechanism for this proof of stake system is, again, enforced in an on-blockchain smart contract. We attempt to replicate the incentives around the Nakamoto consensus, but using proof of stake bonds. We believe that one of the more useful incentive mechanisms constructed as a result of the Nakamoto mechanism is that there is incredible incentive to minimize block withholding attacks. This is since leaders are only probabilistically elected. Leaders are probabilistically known over time. In the original implementation, it was 6 confirmations. When one finds a block, one is fairly sure that they are likely the leader, but they are not yet certain if they are the leader. To ensure that they are the leader, they propagate their blocks to all participants on the network to maximize their odds. We believe this is significant, if not the key contribution with the Nakamoto mechanism and attempt to replicate this incentive. All right, yeah, that makes sense. Saying you want to incentivize people to actually broadcast, like not withhold blocks, basically.
Right.
If they're bad, right? Proof of stake coalitions face this issue since it's possible if one does straight leader election, block withholding attacks by majority cartels, also called the data availability problem, become magnified. Right. That makes sense. So we can mitigate this in Plasma Proof of Stake by allowing stakeholders to publish on the root blockchain or parent plasma chain, which contains a committed hash of their new block. Validators only build upon blocks which they have fully validated. They can build upon blocks in parallel to encourage maximum information sharing. We create incentives for validators. What? Seriously, it's tight. They need an editor.
You get a candy.
We create incentives for validators to represent the past 100 blocks to match the current staker ratio. I.e., if one stakes 3% of the coins, they should have 3% of the past 100 blocks. For rewarding more transaction fees to be paid out to accurate representation, excess fees due to suboptimal behavior by stakers goes to a pool to pay out fees in the future. A commitment exists in every block, which includes data from the past 100 blocks. With a nonce, the correct chain tip is the chain with summed weight of the highest fees. After a period of time, the blocks are finalized. Whoa, okay. There's a lot to unpack there. So this is describing the proof of stake mechanism for, so I don't get like, this is the coded into the contract that's on the Ethereum chain is what they're talking about here?
Yeah, so I think the contract will, so I think BTC Relay like has a few old blocks that it keeps in storage. I don't think it keeps more than like a handful in storage, but in the same way, the smart contract would hold the data about 100 blocks, and then each of those blocks is going to have some amount of validator weight behind it. And so this is a way of having chain reorgs, I think, because then if you have like, you know, you're on block 4 and then like a significant number of people actually have a different block 4 with the same block 3, you know, that you can switch and then build upon that one.
Gotcha.
But after 100 blocks, you can't go back and change anything. So you have total finality after 100 blocks.
Okay, and this is, all right, okay, so Plasma Bot, presume Alice, Bob, Carol are 3 validators with equal amount of weight. They collectively are incentivized to build a round-robin structure for maximum returns. These commitments are submitted to the parent root chain. Chain tip is contingent on the maximum weight score by correct distribution of blocks over n periods. Blue is the current candidate chain tip. Red is an orphan. suboptimal chain tips had excess fees go into a pool for future validators with correctness above some threshold after some end periods. It's presumed that the blue chain tip is finalized. Is this, so I haven't really been following the Ethereum proof of stake research at all, but I'm assuming that this is like exactly the way that their Ethereum stuff's going to work, right? Is this different than that?
This seems much simpler.
So like it's its own proof of stake mechanism. It's
I think
different.
so. But yeah, but also it's like not responsible for all of Ethereum. It's like only responsible for like you and your buddies.
Right.
Your subnet.
Okay, so this is just its own proof of stake design. And then this encourages participants to participate and replicates the 51% attack assumptions by the Nakamoto consensus. In the event a chain is attacked via block withholding or other Byzantine behavior, the non-Byzantine participants conduct a mass compact withdrawal on the parent root blockchain. If bonds for the highest parent plasma chain are in the form of tokens, it is likely the value of the token significantly devalue as a result of mass exit.
Right.
Okay, so this is described. So go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, that's the weird thing about having a new token that you bond, because if you have a new token and you bond and then people exit your chain, then the price of your bond is worthless. And so it's like, you know, if you're trying to attack the network, it's like an additional risk for you, is that the money that you have to use to attack the network becomes worthless as you do it.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, I'll start the MapReduce.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, I was gonna say, I need to look into the proof of stake stuff more. But I think it's like it becomes way more obvious when you have like an implementation, so you can just like play around with it.
Yeah, exactly. Blockchains is MapReduce. So blockchain is to Git as Plasma is to Hadoop. Okay. By constructing computation in a MapReduce
yeah, I need to think about that.
yeah, it's like, what the fuck are these things? By constructing computation in a MapReduce format, it is also easy to design computation and state transitions in a hierarchical tree. MapReduce gives a framework for high-scale computation across thousands of nodes. The blockchain faces similar issues in meeting computational scale and has additional requirements in generating proofs of computation. Ooh, okay, I'm just going to read all of Figure 7 at first, and then I'm going to go back up and read the blue. And look at the picture. So, Figure 7. Blue is messages passed in the parent block to the children. The children must commit to the parent block with some n number of blocks, or else face chain halting. Children must commit to the parent block with some n number of blocks. Okay, so the block data distributes work to the children who are committing to the computation. The third level child does the computation and returns a word list, e.g. 3 occurrences of the word hello, 2 occurrences of the word world. In the chapter, they are responsible for computing. The word list data is returned to the parent as part of the commitment. Word lists are combined together from the children and submitted to the parent, ultimately completing a global word list, e.g. the entire corpus containing 100 instances of hello and 150 instances of the word world. This creates economically enforceable computation at scale with only one block header hash committed to the root chain to encompass very high amount of data and work. It is only if a block is faulty that proof of invalidity is published. Otherwise, extremely minimal amounts of data is submitted on the root chain periodically. So looking back up, looks like they're using this tree to do a sequential scan of a book in order to assemble a word list of all of the hellos and the worlds in the book. So step 1, map commitment and assignment of work to child blockchains, e.g. first sends a book to do a word count to the second, and the second tree depth sends a chapter to analyze the third. Step 2, reduce. A list of words is committed to, and the proof is Merkleized. Proof is Merkleized, block hash, and data is committed to the parent. Invalid computation is enforceable, and if proven is penalized. Parent takes all children and further combines word list and commits it to its own parent.
So
yeah, this sounds like just adding Merkle trees and commitments in a hierarchical fashion to MapReduce, which is interesting.
My question is, whose computer are these things running on? So is the idea that like you basically take like a contract address and you could like spin up an EC2 instance that's dedicated with running the plasma chain for that contract or something?
Yeah, so I'm a little confused about that too, because it seems like you have a blurring of the lines between like who cares about a computation and who is processing the transaction. So here, like, you know, if an operation is on root chain, everybody runs it. If an operation is on the plasma tree first depth, then everybody in the proof of stake network runs it. But then if it's a second tree depth, then it should be like less people. You know, it should be only the interested parties that run that specific computation. But now we're describing taking MapReduce functions and running them even more necessary. So it's more of a way of distributing work than it is for keeping work between only the people who care, which is a little confusing to me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep reading. So we propose a method whereby the map phase includes commitments on data to commitments on data to computation as input, and in the reduced step includes a Merkleized proof of state transition when returning the result. Merkleized state transition is enforced via fraud proofs constructed on the root blockchain. It is also possible to construct a ZK Snarks proof of state.
There it is. Buzzword.
You gotta write ZK Snarks in every white paper.
Yeah, it's a buzzword.
Yeah. For some computational constructions, a map on state transitions may also be necessary. In the reduced step, therefore, more than one bit can be used per UTXO/account for these use cases. Our construction enables...
I was just going to see how much is left in the section. Okay.
Yeah, not much. Yeah. Our construction enables incredible high-scale computation with time or speed trade-offs. These trade-offs produce a network where nodes assert computation and participants are responsible for verifying them. This does not produce a system whereby one can completely outsource computation without trust, and enables the ability to compress computation into bonded proofs. These bonded proofs encourage participants to only attest to things honestly. This again follows the narrative in the Lightning Network, whereby if a tree falls in the forest and nobody listens to it, it presumes that it doesn't matter whether it makes a sound or not. Similarly, if no one is watching and enforcing a computation, it's presumed to be correct, or it simply doesn't matter what the result may be. Computation can be watched by any participant in the open networks, but participants who hold balances and or require correct computation will periodically watch the chain to ensure correctness. The scaling benefit comes from removing the requirement to watch the chains one is not economically impacted by. One should watch the chains where one wishes to enforce correct behavior. All right, so this is getting more into what I was talking about.
Yeah.
It's like you should only be watching the tree that you care about. It's not just about delegating work. All right, so behavior on other plasma chains can be netted together as part of the reduced step so that computation which affects one is expressed in a minimal state. For example, for a decentralized exchange, one doesn't care about which counterparties put in what order, as they only need to see one coalesced order book. So one only needs to observe all other chains as a single counterparty, whereas one's own chain is fully validated to enforce transactions and order fills to the correct person, including oneself. Another example is that one can construct a BBS on a tree of plasma chains, and one doesn't need to receive updates on the topics one doesn't care about. What is a BBS?
I don't know.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, okay. I'm trying to conceptualize this in like real world use cases and interactions. It's like, yeah, again, it's like super, super abstract.
Yeah, I think it'll be a long time before use cases are built on this.
Although I can vaguely see where it's going. You know, it's like you have situations now where like your credit card's getting billed, and if like you're not paying attention, it'll just like keep getting billed. And I can see like a construct where it's like you're in some channel and you're not watching it and you're getting grifted. And it's like,
yeah, that could happen if you don't submit the fraud proof.
Mom, you have to pay attention. You have to run this node locally and verify the computation. One only needs to watch that or run for us. Yeah, so like,
one only needs to watch the data one watches to enforce if economic activity or computation occurs on other plasma chains, which is not necessary to enforce gray. One can treat all other chains as a single counterparty. E.g., in a plasma decentralized exchange, one just needs to watch the chains which affect one's commitments. Okay.
All right. Yeah. So, yeah, I really need an implementation of this, but let's keep going. Description of economic incentives around persistent, decentralized, autonomous blockchains. We propose a structure whereby we can create economic incentives to persistently keep a child blockchain running for state which does not require significant complexity or reliance on state transitions. The native token, ETH, can be used for bonding of state. However, for complex contracts, there might be significant incentives to continue operating the chain due to incentives around ensuring liveness and order fairness of the system. Every plasma chain is represented by a set of contracts. These contracts enforce the consensus rules of the chain, and fraud causes significant penalties to be applied if the fraud proof can be produced. However, to incentivize avoidance of Byzantine states, especially around correctness and liveness, it may be ideal to create a token per contract. This token represents the network effects in operating the contract and creates an incentive to maximize security of this contract. As the plasma chain requires the token to secure the network in a proof of stake structure, stakers are disincentivized against Byzantine behaviors or faults that would cause a loss in the value of the token. The role of the token is to ensure that there is cost localized to the validators if they act faulty via value declines in the token. With simple contracts and business logic, such as basic contract account holding funds on behalf of its users, an Ethereum bond can represent a stake in the plasma chain. The stakes who put up bonds, whether it be token or ETH, have incentives to continue operating the network as they receive transaction fees for operating the network. These transaction fees are then paid out to the stakers of the network, which encourages non-Byzantine behavior and creates long-term value for the token. Since the stakers have an incentive to continue operating this network and collect transaction fees, they will persistently run the chain and are bound by the fraud proofs defined in the contracts in the root blockchain. Ooh, oh no. Trying to get it back to normal.
There you go.
Man. That was high pressure, so I dropped in the wrong place. We'd be screwed. Yeah, crazy. I mean, like, I can vaguely see while reading this how you could construct like a very, very large scale system around these concepts, but it's like super, like high idea. It's not like very tangible to me.
Yeah. Nobody's implemented this stuff yet. So that was a small section. Do you want to read this one too, or should I take it away?
I'll read it. All right, why not? All right, design stack and smart contracts. So historically, many people believe that the blockchain is best applied towards transactional payments as a gross settlement system. LOL. Subtweet harder. However, it's understood that a gross settlement system has difficulty scaling. LOL. Net settled design, such as the Lightning Network, a payment channel network, changes the structure to allow for nearly unlimited payments between participants. Transactional capacity is increased dramatically as channels are net settled on a blockchain. Payments can be routed across a network of these channels. This structure additionally allows for effectively instantaneous payments. This is instrumental for not only payments which require a high degree of time sensitivity, but also for contracts as well. Plasma is not designed to reach assured finality rapidly, even though transactions are confirmed in the child chains rapidly. It requires it to be finalized on the underlying root blockchain. Channels are necessary to be able to have rapid local finality of payments and contracts enforceable on-chain. Yeah, they need an editor, man. I feel like they just are repeating themselves.
Yeah, they're repeating themselves a lot.
Yeah. And once I saw 47 pages, I'm like, damn, they need an editor. It should not be 47 pages.
Yeah.
In smart contracts, there's an issue of the free option problem, whereby the receiver, second or last signer of a smart contract offer is needed to sign and broadcast the contract in order to enforce it. During that time, the receiver of the contract may treat it as a free option and refuse to sign the contract if the activity does not interest them. This is exacerbated as smart contracts are most effective when dealing with counterparties who are untrusted, as that creates minimization and counterparty risk and thereby information costs. Oh my God. I know. Plasma does not solve this problem on its own, as there are no guarantees of atomicity with the first and second signature step for interactive protocols and blockchains. With Lightning, including Lightning on top of Plasma, it's possible to do incredibly rapid updates with reasonable sense of localized finality. Instead of having a single payment, which gives optionality to the last party, a payment can instead be split into many small payments. This minimizes the free option to the amount per split fraction. Since the second party of the smart contract only has the free option on the amount in the split fraction, the value of the free option is minimized. Within the above use cases, it's possible that Lightning may be a primary interface layer for rapid financial payment contracts on top of Plasma, as Plasma allows for ledger updates with minimal root chain state commitments. Oh my God, the layers of abstraction are just...
Yeah, these guys don't give a shit about use cases.
Yeah. At the root of is the blockchain, which is the adjudication layer for contracts and payments. The contracts themselves are located on the root blockchain. Plasma chain contains the current ledger state, which can be settled and redeemed on the root blockchain. Fraud proofs exist. On top is the Lightning Network, which allows for instantaneous payments across Plasma and blockchain. Oh my God.
This is just like hand wavy interrupt.
Yeah. Well, no, it's just an arrow. I mean,
Look, it means it'll work. Very important arrow.
Just open up Keynote and just drag an arrow between them, and there you go. Problem solved.
You got it, dude. All right. I'll start reading about sharding, I guess. With sharded data sets, there is a significant risk of individual shards to refuse to disclose information. It would thereby be impossible to produce fraud proofs. We attempt to resolve this using 3 strategies. A new proof-of-stake mechanism which encourages block propagation. The underlying mechanism does not entirely rely upon correct functionality of incentives. However, this should significantly decrease multi-behavior. Wait, so I think now they're talking about like Ethereum sharding proper, and like how this works or is complementary.
Oh, so it's saying how it would work, right? If you had a blockchain that didn't have the entire transaction history. Yeah,
I think so. Okay, so point 2 is significant withdrawal delays, which allow for accurate withdrawal proofs. Individuals don't need to watch the blockchain that frequently, and fraud on don't need to watch the blockchain that frequently, and fraud on higher plasma chains can be prevented. Wait, that frequently what? I think there's a missing word there. Don't need to watch the blockchain that frequently. X. And fraud on higher plasma chains can be prevented on the root blockchain by any honest actor on the same plasma chain as the user. In the event of block withholding, plasma chains can immediately lock up funds via a proof, preventing an attacker from submitting fraudulent withdrawal proofs. In the event the attacker attempts to withdraw funds above their limit and more funds are locked, the attacking plasma chain loses their deposit. Okay, so I guess chains can attack each other, like plasma chains can attack each other. So creating child chains whereby transactions can be propagated in any parent chain. So for this reason, so wait, any parent chain, so far it's only been a acyclic directed, a DAG, like directed acyclic graph, right. As in every child has only one parent. I haven't seen childs have more than one parent yet. So as in have like 2 parents at the same layer. Wonder if that's possible. For this reason, participants on networks will desire to submit transactions to deep child chains. This creates economic efficiency for smaller balances which do not have the economic ability to pay high transaction fees on the root blockchain, and therefore moving funds can be achieved with many small balances. People are therefore encouraged to create deeply nested child chains which represent significant value. Note that there is some presumption about reputation around chain selection for individuals holding very small balances, which cannot be on the root blockchain transaction fees. However, is mitigated by having deeply nested chains. This security model is the key novelty of plasma chains. We don't even, like, state channels don't even work yet. And then now we want to, like, go to, like, deeply nested plasma chains.
I know.
The UI for this is going to be a nightmare.
I know, this is so, like, just opening itself up to, like, Hacker News trolling.
Yeah.
Deeply nested plasma chains. Right, more unimplemented things, but we can go over this. So related work. Some related projects propose a Merkle tree with reduction steps as proof of computation. However, this proposal is primarily around data availability and encouraging cost minimization around fraud proofs, with a protocol to manage these via an economically incentivized persistent sharded group of chains. Other related projects propose a system of child blockchains that have significant differences in approach. Plasma uses a Merkleized proof to enforce child chains. So TrueBit.
They've told us that they're going to use Merkle proofs like 100 times now.
Yeah. TrueBit, right, which is another off-chain computation. So that's like distributed off-chain computation, but they use that same like challenge fraud proof thing, I guess.
Yeah, they have a verification game.
Yeah, so shares a great degree of similarity and reliance to fraud proofs of TrueBit. The fraud proof construction, all work by TrueBit can be directly applied to Plasma, especially the work around Merkleized proofs. TrueBit designs allow for compact proofs to be created to submit to the Ethereum blockchain, which is necessary for Plasma. So nearly all the heavy lifting done by Truebit paper is directly applicable. The use of verification game, which generates Merkleized proof, provides increased benefits with reducing the scale of computation. Similar assumption as Truebit applies, namely that computational state must be computable and broadcastable online. Data availability. Man, primary answers built upon Truebit. Oh, BBS is back up. Truebit is the notion of multi-party participants who need to compute on shared state. For example, a set of participants only care about a subset of the data, and computation needs only compute aspects related to themselves. Example, BBS or exchange. Still don't know what BBS is.
Yeah.
We also attempt to mitigate the issue of enforcement of computational state rounds via off-chain. All right. I mean, blockchain sharding, right? So it's just saying that this is related work that they think is in the same. What is a federated sidechain? I actually don't know what that is.
It's sort of like proof of authority, where it's just like a block is valid if 10 people
Someone says it's valid. Yeah.
Predetermined. Some majority of those 10 people say it is.
Merge mine blockchain, right? Which is like you just import the block headers, I guess, of another chain or something like that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Tree chains.
Never heard of that.
Buzzwords, ZK snarks. Actually, dude, we had a guy come over to tutor me and Akil about ZK snarks yesterday. It was pretty fun.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to make a video about it once I finally understand it. Dude, I blew his mind because I asked him because he's explaining to me how all this works in math. I'm like, can you make an example of one? Can you make a ZK snark for me and my friend to use where we set it up and pass messages to each other? And it blew his mind that he's like, wait, you actually could do that. And I'm like, yeah, I would really like to see an example of this working. Even if the prime numbers are really small, if it's 3 and 7 or your security parameters, I'd love to see an example.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Cosmos, Polkadot, Lumino. I don't know what that is. Designed for an EVM contract with compressed updates on the blockchain. We are frozen again.
All right, I'll read along yours so that the reader can. All right, so the goal is to construct a method whereby participants can hold funds in the native underlying coin/token of the blockchain without significant on-chain state. Plasma begins to blur the line between on-chain and off-chain, e.g., are shards on-chain or off-chain? They are the chain, as far as I know. There are two common issues in efforts to establish off-blockchain multi-party channels. The first is the need to do synchronized state update amongst all participants where there needs to be an update on the system, or otherwise make trade-offs on availability of global state updates, and therefore must be online. The second is that adding and removing participants in the channel require a large on-blockchain update enumerating all participants which are added and removed. Right. So these are the challenges that I know about. It would instead be preferable to construct a mechanism whereby many participants can be added and removed without significant root chain state updates, and internal state updates are possible without all parties participating. They only need to participate if their balances are being adjusted or if Byzantine behavior is detected. The general construction is a child blockchain, which allows for holding balances represented in a smart contract on the root blockchain. The balances of the smart contract is represented and allocated to the balances of the finalized blocks in the child Plasma blockchain. This allows one to hold the native coin in the child blockchain with full representation of balance on the root blockchain, allowing for withdrawals after a dispute mediation period. In order to achieve this, we construct a UTXO unspent transaction output model for the ledger. While this is not an explicit requirement, it is easier to reason about with rapid withdrawals. The rationale for a UTXO model is that it is easy to compactly represent whether a particular state has been spent or not. This can be represented within a tree for Merkleized proofs and as a bitmap for compact representation parsable by others. In other words, the smart contracts are held in accounts on the root chain, but the Plasma chain maintains a UTXO set of balances for the allocation of the balances held in the root chain account. So just stopping there to clarify, that means Plasma has UTXO, and every time, so I would imagine it works something like this, right? I deposit on Ethereum for the first time on the root chain, and then I generate this unspent output of this new money that has been created.
And then I'm able to transact that output with other people. And then everybody in the nested plasma tree maintains whether or not I've spent that money or not on their.
And I'm assuming it's using the UTXO thing because like it's just simpler. It's like less data to worry about than like the way Ethereum does their transactions, right?
Yeah, I guess
it's easy to compactly represent whether a particular state has been spent or not. Yeah,
right.
So it's for like simplicity or whatever.
Well, it's because when you use UTXO, you have like the entire list of unspent transaction output at any time, instead of needing like to go through all the transactions to see the account balances and stuff. So,
right.
All right. So then I didn't finish the section. Scroll up just one. All right. So for child chains. For child chains which do not have significant requirements around state transitions, it is possible to use an account model for more complex or frequent state transitions. However, there is more reliance on block space availability, the parent blockchains.
So that's what we were just saying. It's like you can use an account model if you really wanted to, but it would be, right?
Yeah, exactly. For now, one can presume a single block header which selects a block of the child plasma chain. It is possible to construct this as a proof of stake set or a named preset of N of M validators. However, in these examples, we are using a single named validator for simplicity. So this is the centralized server running the private blockchain. The role of the validator is to propose blocks which serve a role of ordering transactions. The validator proposer is restricted by the fraud proofs constructed in the root blockchain contract. If they propagate a block with an invalid state transition, any other participant who receives the block can submit a Merkleized fraud proof on the parent blockchain, and the invalid block is rolled back with a / penalty. The blocks are propagated to the participants who wish to observe the blocks, including the participants who hold the balances or want to observe and force computing on the individual plasma chain. While there is minimal complexity in maintaining deposits of off-chain state transitions and withdrawals create greater complexity.
Yeah, do you have to go, by the way?
Not yet.
Okay. I was just going to see what we have left. Oh, man. Yeah, this goes down. Christ. All right. This is a behemoth.
Yeah, I feel like it's like pretty repetitive too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they need an editor.
There's just not enough pictures.
The code to prose ratio is not to my liking.
Yeah, I like more pictures too. It's good. It's like, I get it, bonded validators, right? Fraud proofs, but like, what is a fraud proof?
Well, I think that was what we're about to get to. But,
yeah.
All right, might as well just go through here and see
how
far we can get.
Cool. I got an hour.
Oh, okay, cool. I just condensed this down, like give implications. But anyway, all states within the child blockchains enforce via fraud proofs, which allows for any party to enforce invalid blocks, presuming block data availability. However, the greatest difficulty in this construction is that there are no explicit guarantees around data block availability. At the root blockchain, there's a collection of fraud proofs which ensure that all state transitions are valid when a block data is available. For complex computation, the state transitions must be Merkleized. Additionally, state transitions can also be enforced via ZK snarks / Ned Starks, which ensure that it's so funny, like ZK snark / star, which ensure that improper exits are not possible. ZK snark constructions may need recursive snarks for maximum efficacy. Therefore, may require further research on the possibilities. However, the system is designed to work without snarks. Okay. The fraud proof.
It can use snarks in the fraud proof, but it doesn't need them.
Right. Fraud proofs ensure that, yeah, you could really say that in one line, right? It's funny. The fraud proofs ensure that all state transitions are validated. Example fraud proofs are proof of transaction spendability, funds are available in current UTXO, proof of state transition, including checking signature for the ability and output can be spent, proof of inclusion / exclusion across block. Some more complex proofs require an interactive game. The general construction would be to take a functional approach toward block verification. If one programmed this consensus mechanism in Solidity, there would be an additional input per function of Merkle proof of block being verified in the output to return whether the verification is valid. One then simply replicates the consensus verification code to process it in compact Merkleized proof form, so that one does not need to process the entire block to generate fraud proofs. So, yeah, I guess this is really just giving like a conceptual overview. Like it's super. It sounds like it's kind of far away from having like code.
Yeah.
About this.
So you produce in this picture, you like produce block 3, and then somebody produces block 4, and then somebody comes along, Alice, with a fraud proof to the root chain.
Right.
That's what we expect. Yeah, it does sound like that. It's a conceptual overview.
Block 4 gets rolled back within the smart contract. So basically the smart contract that's governing the Plasma blockchain can roll back blocks because...
Well, the root chain can roll back blocks if it detects a valid fraud proof.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the contract is going to roll. Yeah.
Yeah. So Plasma, if Plasma generates block 4 and then somebody disagrees with it, the way that they have to voice their disagreement is by going to like the higher court, right?
Right. So if it's in a sub Plasma chain, you can go to a higher Plasma chain, but if it's in the top Plasma chain, you have to go to the root chain.
Exactly.
Right. So you go to a higher court with your proof.
Right.
All right, and then whatever. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know how much further you wanna go with reading this versus just trying to think. Like I don't know. Like what are your thoughts so far?
So I mean, this stuff all makes sense to me, but that's because I've actually already implemented a lot of this type of stuff. So for ad chain, like the ad market state channel implementation that allows checkpointing of private data, like I am computing Merkle roots of state transitions, and then I have a verification game for validating that on chain.
Right. So on the root chain. So you're one level deep here.
Yeah. So I right. So like implementing simply just like, block 1 to 2 on the 1 layer deep Plasma chain is like for like a single application is like kind of tricky. To do it way more generally would be more tricky. I'm very curious, like the types of applications that they have in mind when they think of these things. Like, did they just like come up with MapReduce because they needed to?
Well, I think they do. I think at the very end they said something like this, right?
Well, so I feel like if we go to the MapReduce section, they'll tell us like how, but not why. Do like a Control F on MapReduce. Let's go skip to that.
Yeah, they have a section for it. I think it's 6 something. I'll go to it in a second. Oh yeah, there it is. MapReduce.
All right. I'll read this.
Well, hold on. Oh yeah, example applications. Yeah, that's right. All right, so let's just start it. Let's just pick up here and let's go.
Yeah.
While we have you.
Nearly anything which is computable on MapReduce should be computable on this chain as well. This requires a deep restructuring of the way we think about computation programming on the blockchain. This is MapReduce, but with fraud proofs. Each node represents a blockchain. This is highly compatible with the Plasma blockchain restructure described in the previous section. E.g., if one wants to do the standard word count, you can create. So, like word count's like the worst example.
It's the chat server for Node.js,
right? Nobody wants to do a word count.
So there's certain things with front end JavaScript frameworks. It's to-do lists. With WebSockets and Node.js, it's chat servers. And
with Plasma, it's the MapReduce, it's word counts.
There's always the one annoying example that everyone uses for every framework.
Sure, but like we use blockchains for financial applications, not for word counts.
You also use Control F to do that.
All right, so standard word count, you create the Merkle tree of chains operating a reduce function. If there's proof of fraud, then the node that produced that fraud gets penalized. If you can produce a reduce function on summation, then you also produce an average. For example, the average prices, etc. Map function is just sending a computation to individual chains, then committing to the results. It's like, why? So like this precisely is the confusion I have, which is like, why would you send the computation to individual chains, like as a sort of like master-slave relationship, when I previously thought that chains are based on like who's interested in it, as opposed to like just like having workers or something. I don't get how this will end up being used. Obviously, there's a constraint around data throughput, which is why Reduce fraud proofs are necessary. Arbitrary, and like map and reduce are being used as nouns here. So like reduce is not the verb form of reduce here. So which is why reduce fraud proofs, as in like fraud proofs for the reduce function, are necessary. Arbitrary computation of all types is not possible, but it is possible to resolve many types of problem sets. Usually memory-constrained problems can be solved by first running sorting algorithms, which makes trade-offs in interplasma chain traffic. If the nodes cannot produce the actual blocks of computation, then their results should be discarded and rolled back. I lost my place. Okay, so note that this does not guarantee computational scalability. The MapReduce does, since you need to observe the chain to maintain consensus. However, it does give enforcement of activity and the ability to scale it up for the actors. As a result, the primary limitations are around the fact that the parties which are affected by particular computation should observe that set of computation. If one only needs to observe some small part, then it should be fine, but if one needs to observe all computation that does not offer scalability benefits, only benefits around scalable assurance. That said, if any problems can be solved this way, e.g. decentralized exchange, your map set cares about your own trades. If everyone else's netted execution is enforceable, you don't care about the details, etc. I hope there's a decentralized exchange example that's explained.
Yeah. All right. So
but let's finish. You want to go on from here?
Yeah, so the block format must be compatible with data, which can be computable in a true-bit construction. Because wasn't TrueBit dealing with off-chain computation?
But they didn't have MapReduce.
Right. There are commitments to state to be able to construct the UTXO state tree, which allows for proofs of state transition on inclusion/exclusion, account tree for child chains and complex state transitions, commitment on fees, Merkle. Oh my God, they just over and over and over again. They keep saying the same thing.
Yeah, you could just specify this.
Series of map functions. This requires children having a primary threat in true bit constructions. Whatever. Okay, here we go. Let's see what they say.
Yeah, read the Reddit. Yeah.
DApps. DApps
Oh,
can be
shit.
framed as a MapReduce problem with economic incentives. Okay, cool. I like that. Reddit clone on the blockchain. This is primarily about data storage CRUD. Primarily computation improves around access control, identity, and moderation. Okay, that makes sense, right? Many web applications are actually just doing CRUD. Okay, also makes sense. The root blockchain contains the smart contract consensus rules and fraud proofs. The topmost parent contains accounts of the subreddits. Each subreddit is a plasma blockchain child of the topmost parent. Within each subreddit is a plasma chain of posts. What the fuck? Okay. That child chain of posts contains comments as well. Consensus mechanisms enforce access control, randomized commitments to previous block data are committed to in every block header. A reduce function periodically is computed for top posts and other statistics. I have to reread that sentence.
All right. So this is getting into why this doesn't make any sense. So what it's saying is that every single subreddit is going to be its own
chain,
nested plasma chain on top of under the root plasma chain
of accounts,
which means that everybody who participates in that subreddit operates the proof of stake plasma chain for that subreddit.
Conceptually, it makes sense. I mean, to me, subreddits are just they're just shared spaces between people. Right?
I mean, I get it, but it's does the proper operation of every subreddit need a token? Does that make sense?
I don't know. Maybe. It actually seems like this could be interesting. So individual users, computers download the data and software local to the machine formats the data. Well, because again, this is right. I get the concept, right, which is a mechanism to separate the client from the protocol. Whereas if you did have Reddit implemented as their own contracts, then anyone could build a client into any community exactly the way that they wanted to. You could have a very diverse ecosystem, which would be super interesting.
I see that. That's cool.
Yeah, and then you have the base layer of accounts for the site. I don't know. It's an interesting way to construct a system like Reddit. I have to think about it. But submitting individual computer downloads the data local to the machine. Submitting data requires paying transaction fee, right? So then this is the weird crypto economic jujitsu of how we're going to make social networks great. Have a fee for downloading data, which again has not been proven even at a small scale. Like, I'm like, no one's done a social network with a crypto token that has any traffic whatsoever on it, right? So I would love to see small scale examples of that. But this is actually like, I mean, like I do believe that you can build social networks with crypto tokens that are like way better than things like Twitter. And I'm pretty sure that will happen at some point. So to view specific.
I believe that too. I mean, so what we're getting, like, fundamentally, what it's all the same, because it ends up just being like a 32-byte hash and a signature that's committed on chain. Like, you can imagine that you have like a series of posts, and then this just points to an IPFS like hash. And so every time you make a new post, or like every time you make some number of new posts, you like update your IPFS hash to point to like the new set of posts. But then if you imagine that, like, it's not just your posts, it's like you are not yourself, you're not just like a single user, you are Reddit, and then you have a bunch of accounts, and that's like what they're going for with the Reddit.
Yeah, I get it. It makes sense. It's like just the thing. It's like, this is just, you need like, there's not even a single implementation at a small scale of like a prototype. Like, this is like a massive scale system they're describing.
Right.
So that is always the problem with the entire blockchain world, is people talking about shit that's way in the future.
I want to read this decentralized exchange.
Yeah, go ahead.
A Reddit clone on the blockchain, while makes obvious implications for CRUD, doesn't take significant advantage of MapReduce operations, with the exception of site statistics. A decentralized exchange shows that it is possible to trade low latency for high computational capacity. As there are many states, it's possible outputs are defined in accounts instead of UTXO, or for each step in the state machine, that a larger bitmap is used to represent each state instead of a single Boolean value representing spentness in the bitmap. Similar to the subreddit, there is a tree of child chains, each representing a trading pair. Within each is a tree of chains to maximize scalability. For low activity pairs, it may only be one plasma chain, but for high activity chains, it may have much more children. Each of these chains have bonded activity, and the amount which is able to transact per round is limited by the bonded amount. The first step is to have balances in a child chain. So this is likely a payments plasma chain as a base. Next, orders are issued directly into the child chain. As part of the commitment to the parent, all orders are coalesced into a Merkleized commitment of a single order book represented as a single order by the chain itself. This step recursively reduces all children's order book to a single order book represented by that chain until it reaches the highest plasma chain parent. After orders are received, the order window closes and the trades execute in a batch fashion. After this reduced step completes and it is committed into the root blockchain, the individual chains are notified of their allocation via a map step. This parent tells the child what allocation of their orders filled in a deterministic manner, provided the chain was able to see the other orders, which implies that it is able to observe the parent chain during this step. They will be able to prove correct execution of allocation in this map step. After receiving the allocation, the map step continues recursively to that chain's children. When this completes, a final reduce step is made by committing all fund updates into a block and submitting the block header to one's parent. Okay, so stopping there briefly without finishing this last paragraph. They're describing like hierarchical markets. So like you can have somebody that manages an order book between like just you and like a few other people. And then that person will also submit their orders to a higher order book until there's just like a single order book with all trades. And that sort of makes sense. Like that makes sense, especially in the context of energy markets, where like this type of construction would map really well onto like all energy markets, like from your neighborhood level up the voltage to the city, to the region, etc. So I think that's sort of interesting. There are further optimizations by allowing for multiple MapReduce rounds in the event of significant price movements, allowing for high accuracy in pricing. However, this general construction enables immensely high volume. It is theoretically possible to conduct all of the world's trading activity in this framework with some trade-offs in speed by turning it into a batch execution fully committed to and bonded by the root blockchain. Yeah, just in case you did not understand the ambition of this, conduct all the world's trading activity. There you go. Yeah, this all makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't think it changes like the fundamentals. Go ahead.
I was going to say just to create D-mail. D-mail, it's possible to represent one's account in a plasma chain and require payment to receive mail. Subtweeting at 21 right there.
Yep.
Submissions are encrypted with one's public key. Enforcement is possible to ensure that unknown entities must pay. Further optimizations, ZK snark, obviously. Parent chain contains a directory of chains and enforces payment. Simple design, obviously. Interesting. Yeah, that kind of stuff. I mean, I've always thought messaging was going to be done not with like on-chain on Ethereum, but I don't know. It's going to take me a while to process this, I think.
Yeah, this just allows
CDN.
you to do payments for everything.
Decentralized, is that like basically what Filecoin is trying to do?
Yeah.
Decentralized CDN?
Yep. Yeah, this is taking aim at both IPFS and Polkadot. In that it's saying you can do this on Ethereum, but I don't know who's going to step up and like actually do it.
Whereas Polkadot is trying to do something probably similar, just as its own with its own network token, as its own blockchain. Whereas this is doing it as smart contracts on Ethereum. So it looks like so then that should be interesting. It's like the major players are taking aim at the thing that will interop with.
Yeah. So Gavin and Vitalik are playing a game where they're shooting for like who controls the multi-chain world. And like Gavin wants it to be Polkadot because if Gavin's strategy is to commoditize Ethereum, right? To make it so that Ethereum is like one chain of many, and it's like easy to spin up your own chain and like interop through Polkadot using like a specific connector that you can use, right? And then this is saying actually you don't need Polkadot if you want chain interop. You can just plug your chain directly into Ethereum, and that makes Ethereum more valuable.
Yeah,
so
that makes sense because that's probably what they're thinking about in like approaching this is that they see the multi-chain interop like ecosystem emerging, and they're basically trying to defend their territory.
Yeah,
they need something like this.
Yep.
The problem is just
the thing is that this will work on Polkadot too, right? Any state channel construction or like whatever plasma will work anywhere that you can do hashing and signature validation in the smart contract layer. So this, this will work on Polkadot just as easily. Depends who implements it.
All right, let's quickly read through the conclusion. So Plasma is designed with a primary focus on ensuring information availability. We propose a mechanism whereby one can submit enforceable commitments which allow one to hold funds in a blockchain whose state is enforced by the root blockchain. This allows for significant computation and storage across a wide amorphous network of computers. Activities bonded by economic actors, blah, blah. This construction allows for one to do state transitions which would not be otherwise cost-effective on the root chain. It's possible for blockchain to be processing commitments on nearly all financial computation worldwide. Again, like just in case the ambition wasn't high enough, as long as it doesn't take too much working memory at one time. It is only if there is invalid computation that proofs are submitted and those commitments rolled back. One does not give considered trust. To reduce the incentives around chain halting and other Byzantine behavior, fees create incentive for the chain to continue operating. Halting is discouraged if the plasma chain is bonded by activity and a token specific to this chain. The chain halts, the value of the chain declines, creating significant economic incentive for continued operation. So, yeah, so I mean, I guess that what they're going at is that all the ICOs would then could work in this ecosystem, essentially.
How so?
Well, the company, like, you would basically create your own network token for your own product as a plasma chain.
Right.
As opposed to making it an ERC20 token on the main chain.
So I think you still have to make it an ERC20 token on the main chain, and then you just have to move all of the tokens into the plasma chain.
Just into the contract of the plasma chain, and then you could do it.
Yeah. So if you wanted to use this for your actual auction, you could. because you'd move all your money into the plasma chain, and then you'd move all the tokens into the plasma chain, and then a bunch of people would move their ether, they deposit it into the plasma chain with you,
but
and then you would do an auction.
Realistically, because of like gas limits and stuff, like they would still have to be separate contracts and everything. But
yeah, so I mean, nobody has built the off-chain auction yet, and it's like you're going to build that way before you're going to build plasma, because I'm going to build that.
The off-chain auction, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they have built off-chain auctions. They just like are not like they involve like real people and like KYC and stuff.
Yeah. No, I'm talking about like a state channel based system where you're just like sending. You have a deposit. It's as Nick Johnson described. He built the proof of concept for it. You just have a deposit window, and then you have like a bid window, and then you have a claim window. So you send your bids off chain, and then they're signed, and then the auctioneer like can send any number of signed bids to the contract and retrieve your ether and then give you the tokens, and then everybody gets their money back. So this way you don't clog up the chain. That'll exist in like 2 months or like a month.
Awesome. Well, I'll get back to that in a sec, but I was just going to finish the sentence. The decentralized autonomous applications create true cloud computing whereby the data is being processed and validated, but whose member set is ever-changing and amorphous. Plasma can allow blockchains to scale up to serve generalized applications with a number of users without significant limitations. An application creator can just write the smart contract code, then submit the code to the blockchain, and the incentives can persist to continue operating those contracts computation as long as people use the plasma chain to pay its fees. Right. So serve generalized applications with the number of users without significant. Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, I get it. Like they just basically want you to be able to just spawn economies with one contract. Like that's an economy.
Mm-hmm.
Boom. Yeah. All right. So cool. So yeah. So overall, thinking like my initial thought is like I can effectively ignore this for a really long time. But I don't know.
We didn't finish reading it. You know, yeah. Like, we skipped over probably all of the meat of it. Like I'm looking back here. I think we made it to like page.
We made it to 19.
18.
We stopped at 19.
All right. Yeah. So like mass withdrawals on bitmap state. I'm gonna like take a stab at this one real quick, just to see if it makes me think I need to read the rest. The primary concern around the system is around the inability to verify state. To be able to conduct maximum compaction of state transition, outputs may be optionally represented in a bitmap. I just really want to know what this bitmap is. You know,
I think the bitmap is a matrix of bits. That's what I always thought. It's like a matrix of bits.
Probably right. You're probably right. So okay, let's see. So the goal of this construction. This is necessary for withdrawal proofs, which may be too expensive to conduct on-chain. The goal of this construction allows for hodling small balances on the plasma chain. These balances are held in full reserve on the contract on the root blockchain, but the full ledger is not on the blockchain. So these balances are held in full reserve on the root blockchain means that you can't join a plasma chain without having your deposit on the blockchain, right? You have to like send your money to that smart contract on chain, I think. Once you have your money in like the root plasma chain, then you can send it anywhere else. Okay. The primary attack which needs to be mitigated is withheld invalid blocks with commitments to the root chain. In the event that the system observes invalid state transitions, the participants conduct a mass exit of the transactions. With a bitmap, construction of withdrawal includes a bitmap of signed transactions which wish to exit. Game protocol is constructed, which is enforced by a smart contract to ensure correct information. The bitmap ensures that everyone is able to reason about what outputs are being spent. As this is a bitmap, it necessitates that the state be represented in an unspent transaction output data structure for maximum efficacy of small value balances. Spentness can be compactly proven, and a large set of state transitions can be cleanly enforced. After a predefined settlement time period, the bits can be reused. There's a gradient for expensive with high assurance to cheap with low assurance. 1, ledger state on the root blockchain. 2, ledger state on Plasma, economically viable to enforce a single transaction on chain. Ledger state on Plasma, economically viable to enforce bitmap, 1 to 2 bit cost. ledger state on Plasma not economically viable to enforce using bitmap on root blockchain. The 1 to 2 bit mass withdrawal cost too high. For those holding balances which can be enforced on the root blockchain, the requirement to conduct a UTXO bitmap format is not necessary. However, for those holding balances and enforcement is only viable if one. So, however, for those holding balances and enforcement is only viable if some of the English is weird. It's only viable if the 1 to 2 bit transaction gas fee on the root blockchain is sufficiently low. The fourth type, 1 to 2 bit on chain, cost too high for mass withdrawals. The system is still designed to be resilient, albeit with some assumption that named entities will be reliable. Later sections in this paper will describe a hierarchical blockchain structure to create many venues where one can economically conduct a mass withdrawal. Additionally, if the total value of transaction in the fourth category is significantly below the token value, then it can be game theoretically too expensive to attack those balances that the token holders will suffer reputational damage. All right, that didn't really tell me anything.
They're really into those withdrawals. It's like,
well, that's the whole game.
Half the paper. That must obviously be the hard part that they're solving, right?
Right. The hard part is that if you trust somebody even to like produce blocks at regular periods, they can still stop. And then you need to be able to get all your money out from them in a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah, again, I think this is going to be when like if you look at code for this, it'll make so much more sense.
Right. I just think that this is going to be like pretty complex to build, and so like, and I don't know anybody who's like
working on it,
very motivated to build it. I guess Omise Go is the one that said they would, but like for most of what they need, they probably don't need this. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's like. If you did want to transition all of the world's transactions onto the blockchain and do it as fast as possible, you would do it like this. So
cool.
Yeah, I think the MapReduce thing is like an implementation detail, not so much like a necessary feature. So I think there will be other versions that don't necessarily do it that way.
Yeah, it's just interesting because it's like this is obviously the vanguard of the blockchain war, and it's like the actual like user facing components are like dragging behind. Like the gap is like almost widening where the vanguard is versus where the user facing stuff is.
Right.
Because it's like like this, like for me it's just like, dude, this is just 5 years away from even being relevant to anything I'm doing. I mean, maybe not 5 years, but
yeah. Well, you still have the most profitable DApp.
Yeah, raking it in. Dude, I'm making a mining guide. So there's no information about like if you try to figure out how to like set up Ethereum mining software and hardware, it's like really hard. So I'm trying to make a mining guide right now and then sell that one also. So that should be interesting.
Very cool. Very cool.
Cool, man. All right. I'll let you do your work. I don't want to take up too much of your time. Thanks for helping me with that though. That was awesome.
I'm gonna do a mass exit right now.
Well, it's not really mass. It's more like mass. If you mean like the mass of your body, then it's like a good pun. But dude. Like it'd be cool to set something like this up like somewhat semi-regularly. See if we can get other people into like read through some of these things.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like this is a decent way of going through it, but some of these papers are like really wordy and boring.
It's like you have to read through it beforehand and then just like.
Yeah, I need to like create the Spark Notes and then like go to the relevant sections and then just like ask the questions.
Yeah, that would actually be cool too. Like if we can do this on like a live stream where like you had like a Spark Notes for it, I think that'd actually be like even better. So yeah.
Right.
Cool, man. All right.
Take care, dude.
Ameen. Peace, man.
Peace.
See you.